realize that only 37 to 39% of men globally are circumcised? What that means is majority of men you see around outside of the United States and some parts of the Middle East and Africa are not circumcised. And the biggest reason for circumcision, more than anything else, for most is two that I keep hearing, right? We have the religious reasons, which obviously most um, practicing Christians, they believe in circumcision um, because of what the Bible says about the circumcised. And in Islam, also, they believe in circumcision. So, but then predominantly in Muslim practicing nations or predominantly Muslim nations, you see more circumcision. Outside of that, we're talking Asia, we're talking Europe, Canada, and some parts of Africa, circumcision rates are really low. So it tells you there's no medical benefit to this, which is the other argument. Oh, yeah, it increases risk of infection if you don't circumcise the baby. Not true. There's no medical evidence that this is necessary. It is not necessary. It is practiced because it's cultural, it is religious, it's what people accept, and also aesthetically. Because all of the men I've ever known that were not circumcised, when I've ever asked them in conversation, because I've always felt personally that this is no different from female genital mutilation. There's no difference, you know. So I ask myself, or I ask these people, why do you feel like should you have or should you not have? Like if you had a choice, would you be circumcised or not? I suppose is the question, right? And they said they probably would. And again, we're talking America. Most of them, the main reason is because aesthetically and because they were bullied or teased or what have you, and they didn't want to stand out. So I'm making a case for the foreskin. I think we need to normalize men being uncircumcised because that's how they were created. And I'll give you 5 good reasons, mommy, if you have a boy to consider not circumcising. And of course, you don't make that decision by yourself. So I hope your partner will be on board with you, as mine was. So, one good reason is the foreskin is for protection. I know people feel like foreskins actually increase risk of infection because they hold on to the skin and it's just a little tag and we should just take it off. But no, they keep the penile gland lubricated, they keep the glands protected, and they help with protecting. And that's actually a very important function. It's not something that we should just take lightly, right? Second reason to consider is the pain and trauma. Don't say, oh, the baby is still a baby, they're not going to remember. But yet, we talk about trauma even in the womb. When I had my daughter and she was birthed vaginally and breech, I was in the NICU and they kept saying my baby went through a traumatic birth. She went through a traumatic birth. So you think a, an infant can go through a traumatic birth, but when you circumcise them, that's not traumatic. I'm confused. Like, there's a problem with that explanation. If you are born day one and you can go through trauma, and there's evidence that if a mother is depressed, she's sad, she's going through a lot, this baby, that whole energy is transferred to them even in the womb. So you can give birth to a baby and give them all the love and affection and attention. But if they had a traumatic experience or you were in a horrible place while you were pregnant, that baby gets all of that energy and they have trauma. As adults, they're talking about all these experiences they've had, and they can't give you a clear space and time when those things happen. Most of those things happen because they were experiencing trauma even in the womb. So we are expected and encouraged every day to try and have a peaceful, loving, um, gentle pregnancy process so that we would have healthy children. Therefore, trauma exists in a 1 day old and in a 1 week old, and it can pass on. And if we're worried about female's trauma, then we should worry about men's trauma. Because in truth, we need to stop differentiating the genders and acting like what hurts a woman doesn't hurt a man. A man is equally as sensitive, or should I say, equally sensitive as a woman. So they deserve the same level of care, affection, and attention. All right, next thing to consider, if you have a baby that is a boy, that should make you not choose to circumcise your baby, is there is no medical benefit. There is no reason. There's absolutely zero reason for you to consider it. There's no facts. We keep talking about this whole infection, but we can't prove it. So that's another reason to always keep that as a no go. And of course, there's reduced sexual activity. Again, I keep saying there's no difference between female genitals and male genitals. When it comes to mutilation, they have the same sensitivities, the same nerves get impacted. Well, not the same nerves, but you understand what I mean. Like if female genital mutilation is going to hurt her nerves, it's hurting the male's nerves too. The reason why the genital mutilation was practiced for women was more so to decrease that sexual appetite, right? And if you circumcise a man, you're doing the same thing. Now, you're not necessarily doing it for the same reason, but you're achieving the same goal ultimately. Yes, I know men, they're still very highly sexual and all this good stuff, but you never know what damage you're causing. If they never were circumcised, you don't know who they would have become. Now you're coming from this place of trauma, and this is the person you have. Another thing is there's a lot of accidents that happen. Like I know people that had to go through circumcision 2, 3 times. Like the first time they made a mistake, or they cut it wrong, or something went wrong, and they had to make this child go through this whole procedure a second time. Again, they didn't need it the first time. Now they're going through it twice. Horrible idea. Next thing to consider is with genital mutilation is basically the essence of what I've talked about, which is the ethical aspect of it. I just don't see why we have the double standard. You know, it's ethically wrong. Like we have a double standard. We should hold men and women to the exact same standard. That's my thought on that. And lastly, I'm looking at my notes to make sure I cover everything that I was thinking about, just so that I don't miss anything. Um, Lastly, we live in a world where mental health is a big thing. So think about the potential mental health implication that this may cause to your child. Um, Remember, we talked about trauma. So think about the pain, think about the trauma, think about the reduced sensitivity, think about the risk of medical complications, think about, of course, the protective layer, the lubrication, and also the safety that comes with keeping the foreskin. I hope that I was able to convince you today to consider leaving your baby intact. There's nothing that is abnormal. There's nothing that needs fixing. The same way we wear makeup is the same way we feel the need to circumcise. It's aesthetically pleasing. Okay, fine. And it's only aesthetically pleasing because we say so, right? Because everything culturally is just a matter of who makes the decision, who makes the rules, who tells you what to accept and what not to accept. If you live in a different environment and everybody is uncircumcised, then you will not even think of it. But because you live in an environment where everybody is circumcised, if they are not circumcised, now you think something is abnormal. Let's normalize this. Let's leave our babies alone. Let them thrive in their fullness and in their greatness, beautifully and wonderfully made. The way they were created, there's nothing wrong. They are perfect. Just leave them alone. Have you had a thought? Are you thinking, are you considering what to do with your baby when you birth them? Are you pregnant? Do you have a baby? Do you regret circumcising them? Are you considering circumcising or not circumcising? What is your story? And how do you feel about male genital mutilation? That's what I'll call it. Circumcision is male genital mutilation. Thank you for joining me today. And I'm so happy you took the time, if you made it to the end, to listen to me share my thoughts, my stories. I just want us to grow, evolve, and thrive and live fully and completely in love with who we are, the way God intended us to be, the way we were created in our fullness. Thank you.